Cool, can everyone hear me now? Hear me now? Right. Yeah, so thank you so much to all of you for coming. It's amazing to see you all here. Yeah, so we're here today because it's the launch of my new book, Neighbour Kills Puppies, which I was meant to bring a copy of over, but it's over there. But yeah, thank you for supporting this project. And a special thank you to Chris Packham, who unfortunately couldn't be here, but who has written the most beautiful foreword for the book. And also a special thanks to all the residents of Camp Eagle, past, present and future, who have kept this place going for nearly 3 years now. And a thank you to Patrick and the Veggies team for supplying the
Technically, there's a megaphone somewhere. We've still got it.
Hello. Oh, sound. Can you hear me again now? Yay! So I was just thanking, I thank Chris Packham for writing the beautiful foreword to my book. I was thanking the residents of Camp Eagle, past, present and future, who've kept this place alive for the last 3 years. And thank you to Patrick and the Veggies team for providing us with catering and for fueling Shack through the height of our actions. Yeah, thank you, Patrick. And yeah, so I just quickly want to run through what the running order is for today. So in a few minutes, I'm going to speak about my book and explain why I wrote it and what you can expect from it. And then we have some brilliant guest speakers lined up. We have Dan Kidby from Animal Rising, who helped us raise 23 dogs from this place just over a year ago. And then we have Richard and Huda from Palestine Action, who are heavily inspired by the Shack campaign and who, in my opinion, are easily one of the most effective and active grassroots pressure campaigns in the country right now. We've got a lot to learn, I think, from these people. And finally, we'll be hearing from Solly from Camp Eagle, who can tell us more about the amazing work they're doing here. A little bit later, about 1:45-ish, I think I'm going to do a couple of readings from my book, which relate specifically to this place. I think you'll all find those interesting. And I'll finish with a Q&A. So if you have any questions for me, or if you think of any throughout the day, please save them up, ask me them later, and I'm excited to hear those and answer them as best as I can. If you haven't already, I'm sure most of you have, but if you haven't already, I do suggest you take a minute at some point today to walk along the path at the side of this place. And you'll almost certainly hear the dogs barking. You'll hear the reason that we're all here, the reason that Camp Eagle exists, and really the reason that my book exists. And I won't ask you to hold a minute's silence right now, because I think for most of us, those screams are already engraved firmly into our hearts. And honestly, revolutions don't happen in moments of silence. They happen when our cries for freedom echo theirs. When we finally decide that enough is enough, and we step up, we step forward, we swallow our excuses, and when we look to either side, we desperately hope that others have joined us. And when they do, academics call those the moments of whirlwind. Those points in history when the air begins to buzz and radical and revolutionary change begins to feel inevitable. So what I am going to ask of you is that when you leave here, hopefully with a copy of my book, is that you do take that moment to think about these dogs and all victims of human oppression. But you also take a moment to think about what actions you could take, or what actions you could continue to take, to ensure that you're preparing yourselves and our movement for the next whirlwind. So, sorry, I've got a sore throat at the minute and I'm just struggling through that a little, but I want to talk, obviously, about my book, but before I get onto that, I just want to talk about our movement and how can we prepare for that whirlwind. And for me and my experience and through research in the book, it's very clear that all successful social movements rely on a solid foundation, and ours has always been our local group network. These are the autonomous collectives of activists and individuals in every town or city across the country who organise outreaches, regular meetings, and those protests against local targets that can grow into national campaigns. And I know that that ground level, that grassroots organising isn't always particularly exciting or glamorous, but it is the lifeblood of our movement. It is the backbone of our movement, and it's how we learn, grow, and develop and evolve. And we've proven before, I prove in my book, that when we have a solid local group network, and when we pull together behind a unified cause, we have a phenomenal power. It's the power to make billionaires cry, the power to make politicians lose sleep at night. Because while those people might seem like they have a power of their own that is insurmountable, born from incalculable wealth and nepotism and a willingness to resort to unaccountable violence, that does not make us powerless. Far from it. And that is something that we should never forget, and neither should they. So of course I'm here to talk about my book, and to do that I really want to take you all right back to the beginning, to a grass verge somewhere in Huntingdon, where the local animal rights group was so horrified by undercover footage of egregious violence towards animals bred for the research industry that they erected a protest camp. Now I know this all sounds very familiar, but this was not 2021 and it was not this grass verge. The year was 1997 and the camp was set up outside of Europe's largest animal testing laboratory, Huntingdon Life Sciences. The camp had an incredible impact, and it inspired that local group network to hold satellite protests in solidarity the length and breadth of the UK. So that when the camp was finally and violently evicted, a new campaign emerged: Stop Huntingdon Animal Cruelty, or SHAC to our friends and our many, many enemies. And in those early days, SHAC must have seemed hopelessly optimistic. This ragtag group of activists boldly standing up and declaring to the world that we were going to take on a multinational company and we weren't going to close them down. No ifs or buts, no excuses, and certainly no compromises. But this wasn't just hubristic naivety, because when the undercover footage came out of Huntingdon Life Sciences, showing staff punching dogs in the face and cutting open live monkeys without anesthesia, combined with the pressure of the protest camp and the satellite actions it inspired, Huntingdon's share price had plummeted from well over £1 to barely a penny. And in a desperate financial situation, Huntingdon Life Sciences had borrowed £22 million from the NatWest Bank. So actually, to close this facility down, all we had to do was convince one bank to recall one loan. We gave ourselves 3 years to do it, and achieved it in just one. But unfortunately, as those of you who were there at the time will remember, and the rest of you will learn in my book, that was barely the start of this story. Now, I don't want to give too many spoilers for the book, for those who don't know the story already, but I will say that when you open this book, when you read this book, you will be uncovering a remarkable chapter of modern history. You will learn how a British activist ended up in a Japanese prison, how an American teenager was blinded by the FBI inside Rikers Island, why a car park was flooded with Horlicks, high-speed police chases, police smashing down the walls of offices to arrest protesters locked inside, and the countless thousands of animals that were liberated from institutions like this across the world. And in researching this book, I interviewed more than 50 people, not just activists, but also academics, journalists, civil servants, undercover cops, professional spies. I uncovered secret government documents that were supposed to be heavily redacted and have never been read by anyone else. Documents which expose a sinister government conspiracy to eradicate our movement. And something I can promise all of you, even if you were involved in SHAC, no matter how deep in the action you were, there will be things in this book which will astonish and amaze you. There was certainly plenty of revelations for me as I researched it, and I served a 5-year prison sentence for helping coordinate this campaign. And that really brings me to why I felt compelled to write the book in the first place. Because I was far from the only person arrested or sent to prison for the SHAC campaign. In fact, compared to some of my friends, my sentence was light. And as they dragged us from our beds and threw us into jail, we also found that our voices were silenced. The police, the media, the government, they took our truth and our reality and distorted it into a perverse lie. They took actions that we had no knowledge of, that we played no part in, and that possibly never even happened, and used them to paint us as the bad guys, as the villains, completely ignoring the true victims in all of this. And at the same time, this laboratory who had broken the law hundreds of times, who had a criminal conviction for their violence towards non-human animals, and who thought nothing of torturing those same animals to death purely for profit. They held them up as the good guys, as the victims even. And these were lies that they screamed from tabloids, from headline news, and they are lies that have hung over my friends and I for 15 years. And it's probably no surprise that for me it felt beyond time to set the record straight, to explain exactly what happened here, what we really did and why we did it, and what they really did and why. But more than that, the SHAC campaign existed for 14 years. That was 14 years of blood, sweat and tears as we tried and tested countless protest tactics and strategies and developed a campaigning model that could be used to close any facility on Earth. This is knowledge that every progressive activist deserves to have. In my opinion, this is a book that every progressive activist should read so that we can learn those lessons, so that we can draw that inspiration and hopefully save ourselves a little of that blood, sweat and tears in the future. And finally, but by no means least, there are those true victims in this, the non-human animals bred in their countless thousands to be sacrificed at the altar of pseudoscience and tortured in nightmarish establishments like this. Establishments that thrive in secrecy behind razor wire and cameras and laws that imprison whistleblowers. When I started writing this book, it was before Camp Beagle existed, and my dearest hope with it was that we could help shine a little more light into places like this. And now the book is here, and so is Camp Beagle, and so are all of you doing amazing actions to help spread that light a little bit further. And I truly hope my book can help that process in some way. Thank you. So I just want to finish by thanking everybody that made this project possible, particularly the activists of SHAC who got up and inspired one another and inspired me to get up, to step forward, to swallow those excuses and throw ourselves time and again against the razor wire, the police batons, to be dragged from our home and from the streets and thrown into police stations and prison cells across the world. I hope that when you read this book, you will be as inspired now as I was then. And I hope that you will draw those lessons and that inspiration, and that you will think about the actions that we can all be taking and continue to be taking to ensure that we aren't just waiting for the next whirlwind, but we're actively whipping up those winds ourselves. Thank you so much again for coming, and I'm going to pass over in 1 second to Dan Kidby, who is hopefully going to tell us just how easy it is to get dogs out of here.
What a fantastic speaker. Wow. I'm in awe. And I can say, like, having read Tom's writing, read his book, he's just as good of a writer as he is a speaker. One thing, I mean, I feel really great. The reason I'm here today is I feel really grateful to Tom, because after we did the rescue back in June of, 2022? No, 2023. 2023. All right. Tom came out as such a loving supporter, and it meant so much to me. I didn't know Tom before. I hadn't heard of Tom before. The first thing I saw was you wrote an article which celebrated what we'd done, replaced it with history of this with that same excitement of that we can be creating these whirlwind moments again, that we can be creating these changes again. And it meant so much to have someone who had been through this movement like Tom had to be coming out and doing that. But then he didn't only stop at writing, he came out and he was such a tremendous support, along with like Nicola as well, his partner, because afterwards, I mean, in terms of this whole like swallowing, just swallow your fears and just do the thing and take action, and this action that changes the world, like until like 7 p.m. of the evening, I didn't know I would be going to rescue dogs. I was sitting down to watch a fantastic movie called My Neighbour Totoro, which if anyone hasn't seen it, I'd highly recommend. But I was just sitting down to watch that for the evening, and then a phone call came in, people being very excited, having taken action the night before, and the conversation was, yes, we can do this. Yes, it is possible to get into that place. And if we're not going to do it now, it's never. It's just like, why wait? Why wait a moment? So within half an hour of that phone call coming through, I was getting on a train up to Peterborough, sitting down with the people who I was going to be taking action with, and then we ran through the fields, cut our way through the fence. The security guard had seen us. He was aware that we were there. He was shining his light at us. But we carried on cutting through that fence. We just didn't stop. We could hear the sirens coming down as the police had been being called. But it's like, we're here now. What are we going to do? We're going to turn around and go home? It's like, if we could have done that, if we would have allowed our minds just to go and circulate, oh, this could happen, that could happen. What if we get caught? What if we don't rescue any dogs? What if we wind up going to prison for this? There's 1,001 reasons to come up with to say no. But we just carried on. We just did the thing. Yeah, it was about, things moved very quickly within that place. I think we were pretty much in and out of that facility within 5 minutes. I only have a blurring memory of actually what it was like in that place. I remember just seeing like a corridor of cages on either side, and just the howling of dogs barking and barking, the sound which is the reason why I went into that place in the first place. Grabbed a dog and was out there within about 5 seconds, and just ran and ran and ran until he got to safety. So yeah, just emphasizing, like, I have 0 levels of fitness. I don't do any exercise whatsoever. Like, it doesn't take anything special to be doing something like this. All it just takes is just a willingness to do something, to put those concerns aside. And I'd say, moving into doing that action, like, I really was carrying the history of this movement with me. I mean, back in like 2016, 2017, I kind of set myself, and with people who I was working with, the objective of, we really wanted to build a mass movement for animal freedom. We really set ourselves that objective. As part of preparing for that, I went to Earth's First gathering, and I think it was 2017. JJ was there, giving a talk. I learned the history of Shaq there. I think Mel was there, and I heard Mel talk. Can't remember which year it was. Hearing and heard these stories, and particularly I remember like this storytelling session with JJ where we went through it. A couple of years later, we heard from John and JJ telling us the histories of this movement. And we took as many lessons as we could and built those into Animal Rising. We learned from the mistakes that had been made in the past. We learned from the successes. And it's this standing on the shoulders of giants, standing on the shoulders of people who have been out there making this change. So we really see ourselves in that tradition that goes back to the brown dog affair back in the 1920s up until today. And we just, like all of us, just try our best just to be contributing in whatever way we can to the world that we want to see. And I will just say a comment on why for me really wanting to do like an animal rescue at this facility, because movements, a lot of social movements are built on like the anger and the horrors that we see and the desire just to say no and to stop this fucking shit that's going on day after day after day in these hidden corners of the world. But I think movements need more than just that. It needs more than the horrors and just the outrage and the anger. It also needs the hope and the vision of the world that we want to see. As much as we're moved by the horrific things that are happening to dogs in these laboratories, it's the sense of like, what is the world that we're fighting for? What are the lives that we want these animals to live? And we wanted to create something that could inspire people and could move people. And I think, and of course for those animals themselves, just to give them that life. So in that spirit, I'd like to share, we got an update recently of one of the dogs that we rescued, who we're calling Max. It's not their real name. But this was actually not the rescue I participated in, but the one 6 months later in December, when 18 dogs were rescued. And so this is how Max now lives. So Max is the sweetest and most loving little dog you could ever wish to meet. He is very bouncy and playful and absolutely loves everyone he meets, both human and non-human. He enjoys lazy days on the sofa or in bed, curled between his humans, but equally loves going on adventures and long walks where his nose barely lifts off the ground from smelling all of the scents. Diving and rolling in the grass is his absolute favourite thing. Sometimes he gets a little too excited and overshoots his dive, ending up doing forward rolls. He also loves to shred paper and tissue. It's great if you have any papers you need shredding, but not when he destroys the book you were reading or the birthday card you just finished writing for your friend. It's impossible to be mad at him though, and you quickly forget how naughty he was. It is tough to think about where he would be right now and what unimaginably awful things would have been done to him had he not been saved that night. He has a wonderful, happy life filled with so much love and fun, and he gets to experience all of the wonderful things that he would never have got the chance to had he not been saved by his heroes. One thing to say is I don't appreciate the use of the word heroes, because it's for all of us to be stepping up and doing this work. Like I said, it doesn't take much to go in and do something like this. And it all begins with the stuff, like what Tom's saying, the stuff that you do in your local area. The first action I took for animals wasn't by going over a fence, it was by going out and outreaching to the public. Well, probably before that, it was just ranting at my mum and dad for like months about like the problems of the world. And then it was going out and doing some outreach. And then that puts you on a ladder to do more and more and more. As you get more involved in this movement, you get more connected and these relationships are forming. So building this from the grassroots up is so incredibly important. And to link this into like the work that we're doing in Animal Rising, I mean, we are founded in the grassroots, we're grounded in the grassroots, and that's what drives us, and that's really what we believe will bring about the change in the world that we want to see. So right now we're building groups, like we mainly work on animal farming, so we've got like close to 90 university campaigns where they're each campaigning in their local university for 100% plant-based catering, to take animal farming, to take meat, Aryan eggs and eggs out of these institutions. We're setting up, by the end of the year, we're going to have 50 plant-based councils groups where local people are going to be pushing and to their councils to get 100% plant-based catering in these council chambers. It's going to be happening in hospitals in the future. It's going to be happening in schools in the future, because it's mobilising people to take power into their own hands and to be making change in their local areas. Is the thing which really binds this movement, and that provides the foundation for the times when we can get the masses out on the streets. And that's really what we're working up to, is the moments when we can have thousands and thousands of people out again, pushing for this thing, taking direct action together and bringing about the change that we want to see. So that's our vision in AR, and that's what we're working towards, and we're just going to keep fighting day in, day out until we do it. But I'd say probably not with the same level of perseverance that we're doing here in Camp Beagle, which I just absolutely fucking admire. These people were the reasons why I did what I did, because they've shone a light on this place. And they're only here because of the people who did the investigations beforehand and uncovered this place. So it's up to all of us to be doing this together. So thank you so much to everyone who's playing your part in this. I'm really grateful.
Thank you so much to Dan. I think as he was talking, there's something that really struck me about all this is, since I got involved in this movement, I've been told consistently since 1999, the last time this place was raided before Animal Rising turned up, that it was impossible to get dogs out of here. And I think what Animal Rising did a couple of years ago really demonstrates that it's not impossible to get dogs out of here, not at all, that all you need is that confidence, that desire to do it. And something else that more recently I've been told is impossible is to have a campaign like Shack in the modern world. And when I first heard about Palestine Action, I nearly cried, to be honest, to see a campaign that was doing what we did, but kind of on steroids. Like, their actions are amazing. But you can see that inspiration from Shack in there, and you can see that there is still very much not just a place but a necessity for grassroots direct action pressure campaigns. And so without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Richard and Huda from Palestine Action, who are going to rouse our rabbles or give us some inspiration.
Thank you for having us. It's an honour to be here, really, and it's an honour to be speaking at Tom's book launch. Tom first reached out to us when we were charged with blackmail, and he reached out, and actually we were so grateful for that, because we knew about Shack, we were inspired by Shack, and to see that solidarity and to be able to speak to people who had gone through what we were going through and about to keep going through and could give us advice was priceless. But I'll just explain a bit about how we actually got to that point and where we are now. So we in Palestine Action, we target Elbit Systems. They are Israel's biggest weapons manufacturer. And just to give some history and context on Palestine, Britain was crucial in signing away the land of Palestine in 1917. They signed away our homeland and gave it over to the Zionist militias, which was something they never had the right to do. Britain was on the ground colonizing historic Palestine, and during that time my great-grandfather was involved in the uprising against the British colonization, and they shot and killed him and destroyed our family home. And then just a few years later was when the Zionist militia came and ethnically cleansed more than half of the Palestinian population, destroyed 500 villages and massacred many families. We call this the Nakba because it was the great catastrophe that happened to the Palestinian people and hasn't stopped until this day. When we see what's now happening in Gaza, the genocide that's going on, you know, Gaza has been under a brutal land, air and sea blockade, siege for over 15 years. Why? Because they are the Palestinian people, they're the indigenous population who are being kept captive in their own land. Israel controls everything that goes in and out and has been bombarding them routinely long before October 7th happened. And now we're seeing over 30,000 people have been slaughtered. Over 12,000 children have been killed. They are starving the population to death. There are 300,000 people who are now starving, children who are starving. Most of the hospitals have been destroyed, all of the universities, 70% of the homes have been destroyed in Gaza. But what you don't often hear, how companies like Elbit use Gaza as a laboratory for their weaponry. They will attack the people of Gaza and then they will market their weapons as battle tested so they can sell it on to other regimes across the world. Recently, they've been developing the Iron Singer missiles during this genocide, missiles which burn through the flesh of the Palestinian people down to the bone. It's chemical weapons. It's being tested right now as we speak on the people of Gaza. And no doubt, unless we stop them in a couple of years, they'll put this on the international market and say, look how well it worked in Gaza. And so, for myself and many other people, we were sick and tired of begging the powers that be to stop killing our brothers and sisters in Palestine. We knew that they were complicit in this and that begging the oppressors to stop oppressing was pointless. And so we got to a point when we said we have to take direct action and we're going to go after Elbit and we're going to shut them down no matter what it takes. And so, and similar to the Shack campaign, we believe that we had to be focused and focus our energy on a huge target, but one that was so crucial to what was happening to the Palestinian people. And so we would go inside their offices, spray paint inside their offices, occupy their factories, smash up their factories, get arrested, and routinely just keep going and going and going. And when we started, so many people were joining us and were refreshed by it and energized by it, because we said, if we want to shut them down, we just go and shut them down. That's all it takes, is that willpower and that ability to say that this is bigger than ourselves and we will risk our liberty to shut down this company. And after a year and a half of the campaign, we shut down permanently one of their huge weapons manufacturers in Oldham. We kicked them out of their offices in London. They were forced out of hundreds of millions of pounds worth of contracts. And recently, in true Shack style, we've been going hard after the secondary targets. And in the past few months, we've had 4 different companies cut all ties with Elbit Systems. Them have had to write to us, again in Shack style, and confirm that they will no longer work with Elbit Systems and they won't do so in the future. And one thing which is incredible to see here, we've had a few camps in Palestine Action, which lasted 3 years. They just don't last that long. But it's incredible to see this kind of community come out against these types of places. And it was that community, as well as the people taking action in Oldham, it was a community coming out week after week, day after day sometimes, against that factory. We had the same thing in Leicester. We had thousands of people, when we had activists on the roof, come out and stop the police from trying to take Palestine Action activists off that roof, who continuously go after that weapons factory until they're shut down. And I think seeing how Shack had done their campaign before, and also I just think it's incredible that you're here, Tom, after everything they did to the Shack activists, and that they continue to speak up, they're continuing their work, and I think that's absolutely incredible, because one of the things for us was, whenever they try and oppress you, you just do not stop, because they will do everything in their power to stop you. They will do everything in their power to make sure you don't win. But every time you defeat that and you keep going and you keep the resilience, you are the one on the path to victory. And so I think it's incredible to see how you're still here fighting this fight. And I hope to have the same resilience as you, Tom. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Richard. I actually need you all to do me a favour. It's not going to make sense to you, and often people say I don't make sense in any case. I need you to all confirm now that we're at a book launch. Okay, are we all at a book launch? Yeah. All right, come and talk to me as well. Basically, it's a ban on some things I'm not allowed to do. Now, I know what you said about heroes, yeah? But sorry, I've got to say, Tom, Nicola, Greg, Natasha, everybody who was involved in the Shack campaign are a personal hero of mine. And obviously, they're heroes of the animal liberation struggle. But they're also heroes of every struggle of the oppressed masses of our time. And we learn from that. And actually, I just want to add one other thing. Because Tom said there about like small groups around and connected in. Well, when I first started getting involved in activism, there was 2 of us. And we were in a rural area. No, everyone else was very conservative, didn't really like things. And we did lots of little actions, inspired and reading about Shack. No one ever knew. Thankfully, the police never knew. And we never advertised them. So those are the sort of things that happen on there. But one thing about heroes is they don't seek, or good heroes, shall we say, is they don't seek that hero worship for themselves. Yeah? They want, as taking on what you said there, they want other people to be normal, everyday heroes. And that's what I'd say about this book. And Tom's already touched on this, but you've got to read it. You've got to read it, but heroes don't want you to just read their book. They don't want you to read a piece of history. They want you to read it and emulate it. You want to in fact, I don't know how, I've read a pre-copy of it. I don't know how you could read that book and just go, oh yeah, that was nice, and put it back on your bookshelf as a piece of history. You have to read it and go, for me it was like, that action's sick. How can I copy that? How can I do this? And that's actually what you've all got to do. You've got to make that book. What's that phrase someone said one time, yeah? This book is dangerous. That book needs to be fucking dangerous, yeah? And I'll just touch on a few things that further inspired me about Shack that we've taken to heart on starting our movement. Yes, there's the theories and all that, and maybe I'll touch on that really quickly, but I'm an educated guy, right? I left school at 15, I'm from a council, yeah? I need things quite simple. The first thing is, those fuckers in there, they are our enemies, yeah? We don't appeal to people who work in places like that. We don't appeal to people who make weapons to kill Palestinians. We must view them as an enemy and use our strategies in that very same way. We need everyone to be relentless, but we also need some people who want to give up fucking everything. I don't say that to people who live here, who give up everything and dedicated everything to that cause, to sweat and bleed for that cause and risk everything for that cause. Because there's suffering in there, there's suffering going on all around the world, and if we want to do that, we have to, in a way, I know that's what's that phrase? You can't destroy the master's house with the master's tools. Well, I think you can, actually, sometimes. You can turn that one around, yeah? So we have to work like the fucking capitalists do sometimes, yeah? In a much more egalitarian and non-hierarchical way, obviously. So the enemy, name the enemy. A diversity of tactics, all of them, yeah? Don't have some arbitrary group tell you that this is a non-violent action or this is this, yeah? Okay, they're all important as well, but we've got to have a whole diversity of those tactics. And we've got to support each other in doing that.
Animal abusers! Puppy killers! Scumbag!
Enemies. Good. So a full diversity of tactics is really key. So for us on looking at Shack and various other things around that, you know, what is it? Stop Huntington animal cruelty. Great thing, 4 words, yeah. We thought we'd go one better and we come up with 3, shut Elbit down. Because I can't struggle to remember 4 words. Having a key strategy, a key thing that goes on that and goes after the worst company first. And then as we've touched on, those secondary, those tertiary targets, all those companies that uphold them. And also within that diversity of tactics, there is no glory in getting arrested, yeah? Have plenty of actions where people go and destroy things and get away and never get caught, inshallah. Okay, that's what we have to have that broad range. So for us, also having a plan and an idea as to what the Shack model for the Shack, for us, there's 5 key things that we do. Any of our actions have to disrupt things. Like the bare minimum disruption obviously is like a camp, is people sitting in front of it. At the higher end, there's no building left. All right, that's pretty disruptive. Then we have creating that ongoing dilemma for the company. Can they still do it? Will these secondary and tertiary targets, even it's such a small part of their business, if you hit them again and again and hard, they'll create that dilemma for them. And obviously I don't think any of us get quite right, the dilemma for the state, because it's like, are they going to say we're all terrorists, or what they call us today, extremists? And they pass new laws for use. Okay, you want to just play with that a little bit so we don't get all taken out too quickly. And then, again with Shaq showed us relentless, sustained actions. It's no good just doing one-offs here or there. We used to do that with the group I was in, and we'd go home and feel good about ourselves once a year, once every 6 months. But that wasn't enough, because the company really didn't care. We need to go in, week out, if not day in, day out. Sustained actions. And then that fourth one that everyone's already touched on here. Some people have to sacrifice a lot. Our brothers and sisters in occupied Palestine, they are martyred. They sacrifice their lives. The animals in there sacrifice their lives, not willingly, every day. Some of us have to take that on and sacrifice. And sacrifice works the wrong way round. People see it and actually go, do you know what? If those people are doing that, they must be onto something. And therefore I'm going to step up and do that. And remembering our enemy. Our enemies don't like sacrifice. When people are crazy enough, like Shaq do sometimes as well, to call open things and still storm in places. Yeah, they think that's crazy. When they saw us in Oldham and we have a public thing, we have a rapper low key there, hundreds of people outside, and other people get on a roof of a different building and then run across one roof to another roof, and one of them fell through. That was a bit of a over sacrifice. He didn't die. That scares the enemy even more. These people are fucking crazy. Yeah, and that's what we need to get into their heads. And then the fifth one we've already touched on, right? Is you've got to be focused. We've got to choose those targets. There's so many fucking evil companies out there. But let's go one at a time and pick them off and pick the companies around them, because that's how you get close to it. And Shaq, we're obviously within that whisker of closing them down. So I'm going to close there. We'll be around if you want to have a chat and stuff as well. Buy the book, read the book, don't put it on the shelf. Take those actions, be inspired them, come up with your own, come up with better actions, follow the ones that were really good, and let's shut all these places of oppression and torture down. Thank you.
Thank you to Richard and people. That was, yeah, it's very strange being called a hero by personal heroes, but I think just to touch back on that point, as Richard said, everything that you read in this book, everything that Palestine Action do, everything that every activist has ever done has been done by a human being just like you. There's nothing that means you can't do any of the things that these people are doing, that these people are doing. So, yeah, I'm now going to pass over to Solly to talk a little bit about Camp Eagle and about, yeah, all the amazing work that's going on here and the last 3 years.
Thank you everyone for coming to this amazing book launch, for coming to Camp Eagle and supporting our campaign to close down FDR ACAS. Quick thank you to Dan from Animal Rising, to Huda and Richard from Palestine Action for your inspiring talks. Even it's gonna make it very challenging to follow on from you. Also thank you to you, Tom, for writing your Neighbour Kills Puppies. I think it's very impressive to go from, oh, wouldn't it be nice to write a book about this, to actually be here holding your book on your book launch. It's an amazing achievement and a sign of your commitment to this cause. From everyone here at Camp Eagle, we are absolutely delighted to hold your book launch here and to host all of you here. But it actually makes complete sense, because Shaq was a massive grassroots anti-vivisection campaign that was started at the late 90s to close down a laboratory that is only just 5 miles up the road. It was then called Huntington Life Science. Now we all call it as LabCorp. Same lab, different name. Unfortunately, inside that lab, 30 years later, they're doing exactly the same toxicology testings that they were doing back then, repeating it over and over different animals. So on a personal note, Tom, I am grateful that you have taken the time and effort to write this book. Because like you, I was involved for many years. I joined the animal movement in the late 90s, and back then it was at the time before mobile phones, before digital technology, before social media. So therefore, much of what happened on those days is recorded on VHS tapes that are in people's attics, and I feel that much of what happened is getting missed out. Back in the 90s was a very, very successful time for the anti-vivisection movement. Just from the top of my head, I can tell you 5 breeding farms that were breeding animals for laboratories that were closed down thanks to the group of grass pressure campaigns. We had Consort Farm Beagles closed down, Hillgrove Farm breeding cats for vivisection, Regal Farms breeding rabbits for vivisection, Shamrock Farm breeding monkeys for vivisection, New Church Farm breeding guinea pigs for vivisection. I'm sure there was many more other success back in the 90s, and I am grateful that you, Tom, have taken the time to record part of that history that otherwise it will get missed out, and that you've written it from our perspective, because there's plenty of news articles and core documents that do not tell our history. So following on the history theme, I would like to tell you very, very briefly a little bit of my history on the animal rights movement in order to highlight 3 key points. You did 5? I'm reducing it to 3. So I arrived in the UK in 1995. I was vegan a year later, and I was actively involved in animal rights campaigns by 1997. However, my introduction to veganism came through my involvement in social justice projects and environmental campaigns. From squatting social centers, providing services to the community of Brixton, to supporting road protests and treehouse camps, trying to stop the destruction of the countryside and the wildlife. You only need to look a little bit further back in the history of animal rights, and you will find links, direct links, with the anti-slavery movement, with the protection of children campaigns, with the suffragettes. And yes, it is true that AIDS campaign must keep their focus to achieve their aims and goals. So here at Camp Beagle, our focus is always those beagles inside those sheds right now. But at the same time, it's important that we remember and we are conscious that the animal liberation movement is part of a much bigger wave of other fights against oppression and dominion, and a fight to seek a better and more compassionate world. That was my first key point. Thank you. I did enjoy my time in the social justice movement and environmental campaigns, but I knew in my heart that what I really wanted was to campaign for animals. But it wasn't until 1997 that I moved to Cambridge, when one day I stumbled on the streets upon an animal rights stall, and I met a woman called Sue, who I don't think is here today. Sue, no, she's not here. She's a very old lady now. And she invited me to a local animal rights meeting in Cambridge. 27 years later, I am still here proudly campaigning for animals. So this is my next key point. There is not one single winning tactic. There is no one magic strategy to reach our goal. The strength of the animal liberation movement partly lies on the versatility of our actions and the diversity of approaches and strategy. I believe it's the sum of all of these actions that will cause the cracks that we need to make the animal liberation a reality. Anything that you can do to campaign for animals will add to the pressure that we need for those cracks. Whether it's a simple outreach stall in the streets that can turn a passerby in a long-term activist, or whether it's risking imprisonment on an open rescue to give animals the opportunity to live in freedom, love, and care for. So on my third point, I find that it's quite paradoxical that nearly 30 years later, life is throwing me back at the beginning where I started. Still campaigning against that lab up the road, now has a different name, same lab. Campaigning against this dog breeding hellhole, different name, same breeding site. I am truly heartbroken for every dog that is born inside those gates and for every animal that suffers in the laboratories. But even I'm here back where I was at the beginning, I can assure you I am not disheartened. I am quite the opposite. I feel very, very hopeful that vivisection stays counted and the writing is on the wall. I see the animal liberation movement as a dynamic process that moves and develops with the times. Just like in the 90s and the early 2000s, it was a very prolific and effective period for the anti-vivisection movement. Then it was followed by a few years where there was hardly any campaign against animal testing. And I believe that now we're entering a new period to fight animal testing. Not only vivisection is back on the agenda and being discussed among animal rights groups, among society, politicians, the industry, but I believe that at this point in history, we got even more scientific evidence that proves that animal testing is a total failure. There is every day more scientists coming out and speaking against this practice. We have technological advancements that can produce now more better and more relevant scientific results. Especially regarding toxicology testing, non-animal methods are already a reality. And we also have a society that is much more inclined to support the end of animal testing. We can see that as there is more and more politicians now questioning this practice. I feel that animal testing has its days counted and it will be finished. So therefore, it's very important that we continue to do this work to fight vivisection, because the more pressure we put, the quicker we will get to see that writing on the wall become a reality. That's the end of what I've written. I would like to say that we are, everyone here at Cambeagle, absolutely delighted of all the support that we've been getting, and we're really proud to be at the forefront of the anti-vivisection campaigns in the UK at the moment, and we would like to have every bit of your support to carry on this work. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you, Tom, for coming here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you to Solly and to all of the amazing speakers we've just heard. I don't really know what to add to all of that, to be honest. I hope it inspired you as much as that all just inspired me. And I think I'm just going to take a few minutes now, if that's right, so you can all just grab some food from Veggies, maybe grab a copy of my book if you haven't already.